This is the Crystal Chronicles, your Dissopia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia podcast, with Kreese, Mino, and Mark, bringing you all your Devo news and talk. Welcome to Season 4, the LDBT era. Now let's start the show.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Crystal Chronicles. We're so glad that you are with us tonight. Thank you, Jake, for the subscription, and thank you all who subscribed in the pre-show where we were talking pizza. And what's better, New York or Chicago? You let us know. Comment below. And then we'll start the Crystal Chronicles Pizzeria podcast. That's going to be after we're branching out, bird watching, pizza, lots of different things. Well, I'm so happy that you are here on this episode 115, whether you're live with us watching through Twitch Video on Demand, YouTube, or on the podcast app of your choice. This podcast is recorded on August 20th, 2020, and I am your host, Mark, and it's a pleasure to be with you yet again. And I am joined by a cadre of folks. First is my lovable co-host. His name is Kreese. Kreese, how are you doing?
Since this has to be put on the record, I guess, I am partial to New York-style pizza. I'm doing well. It's been a busy week since it's the first week of class, but otherwise I'm doing well.
And I'm also joined by Aarolei. Aaro, how are you doing?
Great today. I just like pizza. I don't know. I really am a snob at all. I just like pizza. That's it. Pizza. Every week I eat some pizza.
And speaking of snobs, we're also joined by Inkwelder from the Tomberry Troop, who doesn't like Chicago-style pizza. Or, well, Chicago-style deep dish. We had a discussion about that. How are you doing, Ink?
I am doing very well. I also do not acknowledge Chicago casserole as pizza. So New York pizza is the only pizza. That's it. So I felt I should live up to my introduction that you gave to me.
Yes, Black Cloud. I used the word cadre, maybe incorrectly. A cadre is a group of trained or otherwise qualified personnel. So I was trying to, say all my co-hosts are very well trained. In Defo, that's why we're here. So, let's talk about Dissopia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Oh, no Mino this week. He is here in, that's Padre Mino. He is here in spirit and in chat, and may jump on here in a little bit. We are giving him a little sabbatical. He told me he's fighting with Xeno, so he couldn't come on. I don't know what that is about. I tried to get some context to his ongoing battle with Xeno, I guess. Our friend and fellow streamer, Xeno.
Mino isn't good at giving context for things.
This is true. This is true. All right. Hey, news of the day. First, let's start with the TCC Challenge winners. Last week, we unveiled the Veiled Magician TCC Challenge. That's our Heretic events. And we banned a whole bunch of crap, and we had an Extreme Challenge with a fun little rhyme. And you needed to take no breaks and use no elements. And it was possible. Barely possible. But congratulations to the very limited number of people who did the TCC Challenge. Pikachu, Buddy, Meow, Ultima, Yoshi Pasta, FF Brothers, Necklord, Arrow, Black Unicorn, Harrieth, GoX, Andrea, Aodin Phoenix, Macheleno, and then for the Extreme, Buddy, Theologica, Dystopia Clay, Dystopia Swifty, Brian B, Snoop Ball, Liz Lizette, Pikachu, Ultima, and we had one that was after I did the image, and that would have been from Dystopia Quane. So check out Dissopia Quane's run as well. I did read them all because it is a short list, and it was a very difficult X-TREME challenge. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you for our group, Ricky and Crease and Macnol, DissophiaInfo.com. Yes. So what did I say? Macnol. I said that wrong?
Yeah, I don't remember what you said, but I think
you said dystopia, like the Shia LaBeouf movie.
Yeah, that's how I. Yeah. Okay, that's not dystopia. There we go. I don't even know how to pronounce that word. Dissopia? I don't know what that word is. But that group of people who always do the TCC. Yes. So Ricky is excited because there's less extreme runs than the TCC challenge. And yeah, all right. Well, thank you all. And we're going to be announcing soon to be sharing the TCC challenge for Ultimecia LC.
Apologies, we got this one out late. It was a busy weekend.
Yes, for Macnol and Crease are kind of the heads of that. And so, of course, Macnol, DissophiaInfo.com, that's where all that information is, and thank Macnol for that. But they were both very, very busy, and so that got out a little bit late. But hey, it's free content. Enjoy it and when you can. All right, so we also got late Chocobo panel missions. If you want to figure out how to get your Chocobos on, then you go to DissophiaInfo.com, and Macnol has Chocobo panel mission guides waiting for you. And we did get the announcement that very soon at the next game update, there is going to be all cycle quests available all of the time. Cycle quest keys will no longer be a thing, even though we just got 3. They are no longer going to be useful, and so cycle quests are going to be updated, and they will be available whenever you would like them. So that quality of life is coming soon. Now, if you have not completed some of your cycle quests for rewards, maybe you were one that never did all of them, get the gems now, because those gem rewards and limited time rewards will disappear when the update happens. And all your keys will, and they won't be good for anything anyway, so nothing you can gain from that. But there you go. All right, well, we are going to move from the news of the day to the first of 2 events. One event we can talk about in great detail, one event that's going to be launching in 45 minutes as we're recording this. The first event is Ultimecia's Lost Chapter, The Governess of Time. And that brought us Ultimecia's LD and Paine's EX Realization. And we're going to start with Paine and her EX Realization. So, Crease, do you want to walk us through what the heck Paine brought to the table?
Sure. So Paine did not get a rework with her EX Realization. The only thing she got was her EX Realization. It was a pretty nice one, though. So what changed with her EX Realization? Well, now she starts with some stacks of her dress sphere, so it doesn't take her as long to get set up. If she uses one of her skills, Break Attack or Black Sky, she'll get to 5 stacks in a single turn, so that's pretty nice. At the beginning of each turn or each wave, she'll get Status Break applied to all targets, which is pretty nice. She can only apply it to a single target with Break Attack at a time. So it gets multiple targets. It was a pain in the butt to get that set up. She also can start with Wing Power immediately applied before she had to wait for Sword Dance to be up to get that set up. So it's pretty nice that she can get that ready to go. Changes to her EX specifically. Sword Dance now attacks twice. It recovers the use of Break Attack, so she has a recharging ability use now. It hits a little harder, more overflow, just generally nice stuff. Notable things to keep in mind: she isn't really changed much. Her Brave Plus and HP Plus get improved if you fully realize her. And a couple things to note about the way her kit works is that her benefits are tied to both a debuff and buff, debuff aura and her debuff, frame debuff. So if you combine them together, she actually applies a combined 40% attack down, 40% defense down, 40% int brave down 40% max brave down, and 30% speed down. So just keep that in mind if she has status break on the target and wing power active. And she has some nice buff auras for her party too if she has wing power active. Not like massive support level, but still pretty nice. And that's about all she got. Not substantial bonuses, but they're pretty nice. The fact that she gets some ability recharges means she can rely on using status break more often. The fact that HP plus is stronger now means it's a much better button to push. She can use Black Sky, but it doesn't recharge. You have to be careful about using it sparingly because she has 6 uses. That's all she gets for the entire combat. But that's pretty much all she gets. I will say that all I did was realize her for the extra ingot. I have not used her at all since she got her realization. I got through the challenge quest using Squall, Shantoto, Ultimecia, so I have no practical experience with her. From what I've been hearing through the grapevine, if you realize her, she's very strong. She didn't really need too much of an improvement, but I don't have any practical experience to talk about her with. So I'm going to pass it over to Aaro. Aaro, what are your thoughts on Paine?
Wow, how much I've seen like debates for on this character. Like some people have said she's amazing, other people think she's crap. Personally, I'm in the more like she's niche camp, and I think part of like what makes people upset is that in Cosmos era, this was a character who had not only really good debuffs in that status break and the wing power thing, but like she hit really hard. Like at the time, she was one of the best hitters in content, and she was definitely worth her hype. But now it's like she's like this more niche character who you want to use to stack with other debuffers. But I think that's really cool because you can just choose then what you want to emphasize from those debuffs. You don't have to take something that emphasizes everything. So for example, you could pick something like Sarah, who can stack more max brave down debuffs with Paine's own max brave down debuff from status break. Or you could pick somebody like Orin, who will also be able to do max brave down, and on top of that, do a melee in peril to make Paine be able to hit harder with 2 out of 3 of her skills. Honestly, I'm just not a fan of Black Sky. I don't think it does anything to really add to the kit for what it does. I do appreciate that it hits as many times as it does, but it doesn't really even hit that hard. I literally use it as filler to charge into the EX most of the time, like in the boss round. So I've enjoyed her overall though, but I do see why she might not be for everybody. However, I think if you're into debuff stacking mechanics or want to even try them out, this is a great character to begin that journey on.
Yeah, I think she has her advantages. Obviously, she is a value unit in that you may have already had her EX or you picked it up easily. She doesn't have an LD or burst to worry about, so she works with what she has. But you do need to build her a little bit, build around her a little bit. You just can't throw her on because she needs to be supported. You know, she does have some lower potencies, and she didn't get a rework, so not a huge number of hits on her attacks. But her EX Plus does do decent damage, and her debuffs and buffs are significant without taking a lot of area on the field. So I don't think she's trash. I think she's very usable, and I think people have been pretty fair in terms of content creators. I think everybody's saying, listen, you know, she's not the worst character at all. She's very usable. You just have to build her up a little bit. As Jake reminded us, her spheres are freaking amazing. So maybe just worth to purple her just to get her sphere, because her sphere is real nice. But I think Inkwelder from the Tomberry Troop fame has a few things to say about Paine and a little bit more experience than the rest of us, because I just realized her as well. Ink, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't purpled her, but I've done so much research on her. And thankfully, Belial, he's run Paine throughout all of Chaos. He used her in Entropy 14 with Alphino and Aphmau to beat it. And that's just with her base EX. That she's been usable all this time. And I thank Belial for sharing a lot of notes with me. So I'm going to try and point out just a bunch of stuff that no one else has covered. That's why I wanted to go last for this. So first off, while her debuff is great, if you stack her debuff, her aura, and her debuff aura, she's giving you about 80 to 90% swing in stats across all the major stats. That's basically Afmal level or Kefka level, but she's in the middle. Kefka does all his debuffs, 6 debuffs. You can't pair him very well with other debuffers. Afmal has 3 framed buffs, so it's hard. It can be hard to pair her with other, or does she have 4? She has a lot of frame buffs. I think it's 3. It's hard to pair her and stack more. Of course, stacking auras is easier, but all Paine has is literally 1 debuff on the enemy, and that's it. And you get access to that same stat swing that a lot of other characters are. The problem is that her base kit is abysmal, right? Like Aaro said, Black Sky is awful. It does AoE shave, right? Which is helpful. Her EX does also, but it's very outdated. And so you need to run her with a battery. She has a higher setup cost than most characters, right? So you have to use her with a battery. You only bring her to a fight when you want to stack debuffers, right? Well, thankfully, we've gotten access to a ton of debuffing batteries, right? Arciella, Amiditalian, Quistis, Kais, Ramza, Charlotta, Sarah, Lena. These are all really popular characters that I just named. None of them were passed over. All of them have been chased at some point, or at least hyped about. And you just need one of them to be able to use Paine for general content and enjoy her, right? Which is a great advantage of her. I totally agree with Aaro that she's very niche now, specifically because she sort of runs to me like Leon or Yuffie, where she can do things that just no other character can enable. But Paine needs allies to do it, right? Because if you pair her with Lena against a single target, yeah, the Eye Brave goes to 0. Enemy Eye Brave goes to 0. You can break them every other turn. You're basically neutering them. Worst neutering is Max Brave of 0. So pairing Paine with Sarah and with Arciella for the entire first half of the boss fight until the boss hits 50% HP, they're debuffing 130% Max Brave. The boss is basically, it's like having Setzer's freeze debuff for the entire first half of the boss fight. That's up. They can't touch you. You can completely ignore boss mechanics, provided they don't push off your, like Sarah's generic debuff in that example, and they don't cleanse debuffs, right? You literally can ignore them. If you use Desch, who we'll talk about, Desch has a higher frame Max Brave, or if you swap someone for a Quistis friend, you can get up to 150% Max Brave down, and they can't do squat. You literally can't die. It all becomes down to completing the quest in the amount of turns. And what's surprising is, like, let's say that you paired Quistis with and Arciella with Paine. Yeah, while Paine is not providing battery like the other two are, Paine is dealing more damage via her kit. Like damage per turn, yes, she's getting batteried, but she still can deal out more damage than the other two. And this was tested by Belial on a Miditelian Chaos. Paine did more damage than all of them. And she did not get swapped. And she doesn't need to get swapped because she recharges her, the skill 1 recharge lets her spam skills nonstop for 40 of her turns. I don't know how many chaoses everyone's doing that's over 120 turns, but Paine never needs to use that mediocre HP++. Unless you put a 20% speed up in the party. If you do that, you need an extra HP++ in order to charge it. It disrupts that. But otherwise, I mean, for all of that, right? I mean, look, Paine, you need specific allies to do that kind of cheese, whereas Leon and Yuffie just have access to it in their base kit. And, you know, Sarah is not going to be viable. She'll be viable for a while. I love running Sarah, but, you know, as more content comes out, these debuffers that we have now, you'll need to update the debuffers if you want to continue to use Paine in this way. And that makes her a little tricky. So I look at her as a very luxury unit that if you want to use her, you can enable completely broken, busted things. But if you don't enable her, she is, I have to say, she's like excessively weak if you don't actually like pair her properly, right? So for like a new player, you should not be touching Paine. You don't have the roster to build around her. But I think otherwise she enables some completely broken, busted stuff that is super fun for players and that a lot of people would enjoy. And I can't wait to see if this works on Odin Chaos. Odin's supposed to be really hard, and you can, it doesn't cleanse debuffs from what I can tell. And I wonder whether Paine can completely neutralize and remove all threat from one of the hardest chaoses that we're about to get. So
Well, that sounds like
that's
a
my
good challenge.
Paine rant.
Yeah, we'll see. I ended up skipping Paine because this has been an ingot-heavy month for me, and I had to cut some losses somewhere, and Paine ended up being one of those losses.
Well, just remember, if you do decide to invest in Paine right now, you'll have her for the challenge quest when Yuna gets her burst and Riku gets her LD. So that will be, just saving for the future. Yeah, that has not been announced, FYI. Hey, there's another character on this banner who did get an LD, and she is the sorceress from the future. Spoilers. Ultimecia from Final Fantasy. She's the boss. Yeah, Kreese.
Speaking of characters that did not get any changes in their base kit, Ultimecia's base kit did not change at all. The only thing she got was her LD weapon, which is really all she needed, I think is what we've generally agreed upon. So her LD weapon gave her a nice substantial boost to her attack stat if you equip it and fully max limit break it and equip the passive. It also gives her the LD ability Shockwave Pulsar. She gets 4 uses of it. It's a nice AoE Brave plus AoE HP attack and split damage. The big thing it does, however, is it gives her immediately 5 stacks of her Maleficium buff. So she doesn't have to worry about building up Maleficium anymore. She just gets it, which makes it a great starter for combat. So keep that in mind. Shockwave Pulsar is a great turn 1 ability use because it just gets her going right away. No longer does she have to waste turns building that up. The other thing it does is it gives her 10 turns of a new buff called Sorceress's Intervention. Sorceress's Intervention does 2 things. It gives her a Brave regen buff, and it increases her Stolen Brave overflow from all sources, which is pretty nice because her Stolen Brave overflow is not substantial on most of her abilities. She got a little bit more from her character boards, but mostly this helps bring her up to reasonable levels now, compared to other more recent characters. So that's pretty much it. She got some more Brave regen from Sorceress's Intervention. She got a faster windup. She got some extra ability uses from her limited ability, and she gets some nice Brave regen to help her be able to lean more on her HP plus. And that's really all she needed. Just keep in mind she also did get her, and Paine did this too. I forgot to mention that they do get character boards. You get the character boards. They get a little bit of a nice character boost, and that's all Ultimecia needed. Ultimecia didn't change the way she plays. She still plays the same. You just weave in the LD ability uses to keep her going. From what I did get her LD from tickets. From what I've been able to experience when my experimentation of her, especially in longer fights, you cannot maintain that LD buff the whole time. I've been opening with Shockwave Pulsar to get up to 5 stacks of Maleficium, and then sticking in the LD uses when I feel it's appropriate to build up, either for later in the fight when I need the Brave regen, or for when I think I'll need it to set up for important points. And then that's basically it. Arrow, what are your thoughts? I know you don't like Ultimecia, so I'll let you go first, and then we'll pass it off to Ink.
She's not a villain. She's misunderstood.
Very true, but I don't know. She seems pretty happy to be pretty bad and manipulative in that lost chapter. But besides the point, we're gonna ignore the fact I didn't pull for her. I'm going to still bring up some good points and then bring up some downsides that weren't mentioned by Kreese already. So one of the things with the LD is that now she has her own region buff, which is pretty huge. This also will stack, of course, with other region type buffs from other characters. So a very, very common way to have built her in the past has been to capitalize on those regions so that she can always deal out her max damage. We also now, of course, have elemental enchanters and imperilers who she will work pretty much generally all right with because she's a non-elemental damage dealer. But the problem is, even though she can do all that, she kind of can eat through buffs, especially even her own buff because of the way her EX works, where she gets the extra turns and everything. So this does need to be kept in mind. However, we did discuss and check in game, you can extend Ultimecia's LD buff. So this means you can play her with characters like Saz, Yuna, Hope, etc. to lengthen out the buff duration further if you want to go that route. And some of those characters are actually going to work okay with her. So, there's options here. I think that's really great. I always like characters with lots of ways to work in teams. And Ultimecia will definitely satisfy in that way. However, I don't think she's going to be the same powerhouse she was when she first released. However, I think she's still really strong magic damage dealer. And we haven't had a non-elemental damage dealer that's new since that old, I think, Cloud of Darkness and Kefka banner. And that was 2 months ago almost now.
Almost so 2 months,
yeah. So, I mean, if you really want a non-elemental damage dealer, this is a good one. You can't really mess it up. She's
don't forget Trey.
Oh, yeah. Well, Trey was non-elemental range, though. So
fair.
Non-elemental magic, yeah, I think is
the
right.
Yeah. So it's something to keep in mind. And since she does have her own sap debuff of now on her own, you can still stack it with other characters like Shantoto or Leon, who's going to get upgraded very soon. So I'm really excited to see what they'll do with her because I think she's got a lot of potential for the rest of this Chaos era. And man, I got to tell you, that burst she gets later, that's a really nice animation. I wouldn't blame people getting that down the line.
Aero did make me remember a couple things before Ink speaks. If you didn't like Ultimecia's playstyle before, it hasn't changed. It's pretty much the same. She still chews through buffs like nothing else. So be careful who you pair her with. And yeah, sorry, Ink. You can go ahead.
Okay, am I going before Mark? Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I pulled her for the first time. I never wanted to use her because of the annoying ramp up and the fact of having to maintain her stacked buff, and you don't need to worry about that anymore. So pulled her, purpled her, and have been very much enjoying using her, especially with Charlotta. Oh my God, the two of those together are really, really fun. Just different things to say is at least her role coverage is still great, but we have so many other characters that do similar things to her, and that's why she was such a powerhouse originally, was that her damage was unparalleled in early Chaos. She had a framed sap. She had all these things. Well, now we have a mid-Italian. We still have Charlotta. They've always been competing because they came out close together. We have huge damage dealers like Trey and Saz and other people that can pound out a ton of damage. So she doesn't. Her free turns are incredible. So if you want to stomp Chaos, and you pair her with a mid-Italian and I don't know and Charlotta, sure, whatever. Not only do they have 6 frame debuffs and they can't buff, the bosses can't even buff themselves. But you can pound out a ton of damage and probably just stomp Chaos with a really low turn count. She feels like a win more button in my book, but she is excessively fun to play. I want to talk about her banner, but I'll let Mark go first. So yeah, why don't you go, Mark, and then come back to me?
Yeah, she's one of those characters that was good on release. She's decent now. She's going to come back with a burst, and so you're going to get your use out of her because she's one of those characters being a main villain that just comes back, just like the protagonists in a sense, especially the protagonists who aren't getting burst weapons initially. They just kind of come back, and so your investment on that, it's really good. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say. plays a lot smoother now. You just you open with an LD. Then you can kind of do whatever you want and just juggle between LD and AA to get that regen up for when she needs to do damage with her HP plus. She's doing tons of damage. She's doing good AoE damage. She gets free turns. I mean, yeah. She doesn't not pretty much play well with anybody. I mean, yeah, Afmao and Ramza or other characters, even Zaz, who give her all those Zaz extends buffs and has long-term buffs on his buffs. She's not going to burn through buffs terribly or be destroyed because she's burning through buffs. So I mean, it's not like she doesn't pair well with a lot of other people, and obviously you can enchant and peril with her as well, which is nice. It just gives her a little extra edge. But yeah, if you can do what Ink said, which is kind of set the board with frame debuffs, that's really cool. Or buffer up with Eye Brave regen. That will really help give her some longevity. But with her LD for more ability uses, she does have quite a bit more longevity than she did previous. So that really helps. So Ink, what other thoughts do you have?
I mean, they were talking about it in chat, right? And Arrow had mentioned it briefly, but anyone that's deluding themselves, that's like, I'm pulling for Pinello's LD, so I'm gonna wait until later to get Ultimecia, or I'm pulling for Hope. Yeah, I would be utterly shocked if those people that are chasing them that late. Ultimecia's BT and her LD is surrounded by gas with Ramza and Paladin Cecil, and Furion and Cloud are all really close by. I probably just named at least one character that someone's probably planning to pity. So if you're telling me you're going to go chase Pinello's LD and then you're going to turn around and on that same day you're going to go and you're going to pull Ultimecia's LD because Palom and Papalimo are on it, yeah, I bet you're actually going to skip that banner. You probably won't do it unless you actually luck her BT while chasing Pinello's LD. So it makes a lot of sense to pull now. You would get 2 challenge quests here, and then you get 4 challenge quests when her BT comes out. She's on more banners than normal. So that is a lot of getting six quests out of a character is totally useful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's much more than average, and that's happening. So
yeah.
But again, I mean, she's definitely a character you can skip if you're, not interested and, not worried about challenge quests.
Oh, you can skip it, but don't delude yourself thinking you're going to pull her LD after you go and get Pinello's LD. I don't think people are actually going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's a fair point to make.
Yeah. Well, hey, we have a new announcement. Our podcast polls, if you go to our Discord server, there is a podcast polls tab under the podcast where you can vote on what you're going to do for each of the banners. Now, Quetz Zalma on Discord, who runs the Materia bot, has opened up the podcast polls to anyone who has a Defo server. Currently, there are 19 Defo servers using the podcast polls or the poll command, and he did share it to all the server admins that use MateriaBot. So if you are on a server with MateriaBot, you can add the polls to the banner polls to your server, and then we can do a global poll. So please don't forget to actually go do the poll. But yeah, so now we have global, not just our Discord server, which is a fairly large server, but we now have global polls, which is really cool. So I'm going to share the global results. And again, thank you to Quetzalma for all the work he's done with MateriaBot. Just relaunched MateriaBot. I don't know if it's 2.0 or 3.0, but the new version of MateriaBot. So if you're interested in helping him out, you can reach him on Patreon, search MateriaBot on Patreon, and support MateriaBot and the good work it does. A wonderful resource for all of our servers. So, for this banner, the Ultimecia LD, 196 skips, 270 people using tickets, 9 using gems, 40 going to pity the LD, and 3 willing to pity Shantoto's burst on this banner. So very interesting. And thank you, Aarolei, for the link to Patreon, www.patreon.com/MateriaBot. And that would help out MateriaBot and all the good work it does. So go check out the podcast polls in the future, either on our Discord or any Discord that is a DFO Discord, including Maincord. I believe it's on Maincord as well. So awesome. Thank you, Quetz, for that. And it's cool to see a little bit broader picture than just our group. So we'll share again the podcast polls for the global server as we talk about the next one. So this LC, as all Lost Chapters do, had a chaos fight. And then after you beat the chaos fight, it does unlock a challenge quest. The chaos fight brought back the effects, which are a boss type that's super, super annoying. And
yeah,
you probably wish that you didn't do this, but that's what it is. So let's talk about this fight. It's a 2-wave fight. The first wave was the Samsung, with the weird-looking robot things, the Sam 08G, or, I don't know if that's supposed to be a word. Samsung. They explode like Samsung phones, so be careful. But they're big mechanic, so they can buff themselves to be resistant to melee in range, but it's not something that you can get over by enchanting and imperiling because it's a framed buff. So you either have to take care of the buff or delay them to heck so they can't cast it, or bring magic dealers. That's why magic dealers are kind of the ideal thing here. So that's really the first wave. They're not too terribly damaging. Macnel's currently working on the boss guide. It's not up yet. Again, he's been very busy. So he is working on it now. He actually sent me the notes of this page. So I remembered that they did do that because that Squall was hitting resistance the entire time because they melee and range resistance. So that's the first wave. It's annoying, but not terribly annoying, especially if you're just going in with some big heavy hitters, regardless of if you're doing the challenge quest or regular cast. The second wave, you fight 2 effects, and they are awful. I mean, they're terrible, terrible bosses. The main thing that they do is they cast ability on themselves. They target themselves, and they cast something called Aqua Power. Usually happens around, I think it's 80% of their health, 50% of their health, maybe 30% of their health, and it may happen more than that. But
they are guaranteed to do it at 80% and 50%, and they can do it more often than that.
They can. They will do it if you let them live long enough, but they definitely do it automatically if you get them beyond the 80% threshold, the 50% threshold as well. So it's bad. So it makes them damage resistant, and then they come out of break and kill you. Or if they don't come out of break and kill you, they come out of break and break you, which is not break the ability that is like you're breaking your brave, but they break as in the Final Fantasy ability, which turns you to stone for 2 turns, which is really, really awful to be turned to stone and not be able to act, although you still tick down, so you lose your buffs and everything else. Yeah, that's terrible, and you don't want. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So when you're fighting the chaos, you can just delay them forever and destroy them. But when you're doing the challenge quest, or if you're trying to do a TCC challenge, which hasn't been announced yet, you have to deal with this Aqua Power and either figure out how to survive it, or get through the breaks, or bring characters that make you immune to that. Now, if you have them paralyzed before they switch, so if you have them paralyzed from like 81% health down to 79% health, where they would normally switch to targeting themselves, they won't target themselves. And so there's a little bit, I don't know if it's a glitch or just how the like how it's programmed, so you can actually make them jump over the first aqua power, and if you can do it well enough twice, you can make them skip over the 2 aqua powers and hopefully kill them before they do that. So again, if you're able to paralyze them, you have to use paralysis. So either actual paralysis or like Shantoto's LD ability is paralysis. So that's how it works on this. If you can paralyze them and have them paralyzed before they meet that HP threshold, then they'll skip over that phase and just come out of it and do big damage to you. Potentially they come out and do their big attack, but they don't get all the brave reduction and all that nasty stuff that sucks. So yeah, or someone saying delete. Yes, you can delay or delete. That's a real good strategy. Kreese, did you have any thoughts about? I've done this fight too many times. Kreese, have you had any thoughts? Thank you, Yoshi Pasta.
Are we talking about just the general chaos or the challenge quest?
Let's just general chaos at the moment.
I actually did this with the same team for both, except I used an Amaditelian friend for the general chaos, which made it infinitely easier because I just deleted them to oblivion. Which, as you can imagine, made this very simple because they never really did anything. Yeah, it wasn't too hard with an Amaditelian friend. Those are my thoughts. You just delete them and they go bye-bye, and then you laugh.
Yeah, Aaro, did you have any thoughts? I know you shared something in chat that I didn't say, so if you wanted to share that.
I absolutely hate this fight. Like, originally, I had to gym revive to get the clear for this chaos back in the day. I didn't pull for Ultimecia. I didn't have any other big characters that could really help you get through it other than I had built Charlotta. So I had to get my revenge. So I did the quest base chaos with the synergy team. I used Paine, Squall, and Toto at first, but then after that, I decided, nah, we gotta do this right. So I decided to use Trey, Ramza, and Alphanaud to get my truest revenge on the fight. And if you don't deal with that aqua power mechanic, it's disgusting. They dispel your buffs when they use Demon Splash. Yeah. It's awful. So you can't use somebody like Porum to try to tank the attack. No. The character has to have last stand naturally. Or if you're bringing Freya's not the one being targeted with Demon Splash. So it's just, I don't know, man. This fight, it gives me anxiety every time I play it, and I'm just done. I don't like this fight. I still don't like this fight even today. That's pretty much all I got to say.
Ink, did you have any thoughts on this? Demon Splash is the name of the big attack, and it does remove all your buffs, which is awful. So
it includes Alexander. So if it hits you with Demon Splash, lowers you, it removes Alexander's buff so that it never triggers again.
Yeah, Alexander is not the ideal challenge quest friend. FYI, I did bring Alexander for the challenge quest. I'm and Shantoto got last standed. And Alexander and stoned, and then Alexander didn't trigger. She didn't get last standed. She got stoned. First, it's awful.
Yeah, I mean, this was a stomp or skip for me. I spent a good portion of Thanksgiving weekend last time trying to clear this without Ultimecia. I did end up completing it, but it is my most hated event that I've ever had in the game. And so I stomped the living crap out of it. It was very satisfying to do so. And I did it with Sabin, no less. I did need Ultimecia to do that, though. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about I'd say let's talk about the challenge quest specifically, because I think this is probably one of the more toxic challenge quests that we've gotten so far.
It's a very rude challenge quest.
Yeah, I mean, it helps, right? When the first wave resists 2 of the 3 characters on the banner.
Yep.
To watch a Squall with BT, HP plus for 8,000 damage total, and splash for 4, and watch a Paine use her skill 1 and deal 5,000 damage. I do not understand why they didn't remove that from the challenge quest. That makes, you want to leave it in the main one, fine, but removing 66%, that's it's bad game design. They're asking us to paint a house with a hammer, and I don't understand why. They need to make adjustments, but
Macno,
more about
the
it.
first wave of the challenge quest was, as soon as they put the physical damage resist up, Squall Brave attacked, and they just kept hitting him, and I let Shantoto and Ultimecia do the work. Yeah. That's what ended up happening. Squall sat there, took Brave hits, and just tried not to get broken, and let the other two deal damage.
Yeah, Macnol is saying, kind of going back to the effect of Demon Splash, Leviathan, the buff from Leviathan is dispelled and then reapplied instantly, and they've tested that out. So the Alexander buff is applied and then dispelled. The Leviathan buff is dispelled and then reapplied. So who the heck knows why that is? But yeah, I brought Squall, Shantoto, and Ultimecia for the challenge quest. It was not what I would call easy, but it was, quite a bit easier than not having those three. Although I really think probably the safer, slower bet, because that was pretty quick. You just kind of have to power through and kill them. The safer, slower bet was probably with Paine, using her debuffs in conjunction with some other things. So I don't know what you all, if anybody did anything besides, or if anybody used Paine on the challenge quest. But
Arrow probably has the best experience to speak to the masses with her run. But I know that having Squall's Burst, Shantoto's LD, and Ultimecia's LD, I did have no trouble with it. They did not use Demon Splash once.
Yeah.
I had a lot of trouble with this since I had no bursts. I had to spend a couple hours trying to figure out a strategy that worked for me, because my initial strategy I went with was I had to take the first Aqua Rise. I had to let Shantoto was always the first target. I had to let her take some HP damage so that when the second Aqua Rise came around, she would not be the primary target. And what my original strategy was I would try to paralyze them, lock them out, and then rush them down before they could actually Aqua Rise the second time. So as soon as they started preparing for it, I tried to see if I could burn them down before they could activate it, and kill them before they could actually get any HP attacks off. That strategy wasn't working. And what I ended up having to go with was instead let them get that second stone off. So what ended up happening is that they actually targeted Squall on my successful attempt. Actually, no. Squall ended up taking HP damage during the fight, so Ultimecia had the second highest HP going into, or had the highest HP going in. So she was targeted with stone. I had to set it up so Shantoto would take a turn immediately after Ultimecia got stoned, but both of them had the elude debuff off so that she could paralyze both of them so that they would not be able to take another action afterwards, which was really difficult because even with Leviathan, they were ridiculously fast. So I had to mess with Shantoto's turn rate by using a high turn rate action, because she would not have gone fat. She would not have gone before them if I had not used her high turn rate action. Set it up and basically saved all of her LD abilities for this last one. And then as soon as I made sure that they were locked down, then I saved my summons and basically all of my big actions for the end, and then go nuts. And they basically never took an action after I got past that point. I think they maybe took one last action, but that was enough to get through them.
Yeah, I want to be, before we pass it to Arrow, because I believe she used Paine. Looking at the call to arms, again, DissophiaInfo.com, that's the call to arms. You can submit all of your runs. There is quite a few challenge quest submissions, none of them with less than 2 LDs. So if you've done a challenge quest with only 1 LD or no LDs, record it and share it, because right now there are no submissions that I see, maybe Macno can tell me if I'm wrong, with only one LD. Now, there are some submissions there's one with Paine only EX, and there's a couple with Paine EX 0. So just realized EX. But all of those have 2 other LDs. So this is a challenging one, and this is definitely a pull to complete challenge quest. So, Aaro, did you use Paine, and how did that work out for you?
I used Paine. I don't know. This challenge quest only took me a few tries because I never had problems really with wave 1. It was wave 2, and the main thing I did was I would deal with the aqua powers as they came using like Squall LD or just some way to deal with it. Mainly Squall LD his EX, because they were just really good at shaving the effects when they were in aqua power for some reason. And then I got to around like the 40% mark on the HP. And then I started using, I used the other 2 shots I had of Toto's LD to basically paralyze back to back when they had aqua power being ready to be targeted. And then I used my summon, I used my burst window from Squall, and I just basically had hardly any HP left on the both of them after that. And then I wound up just killing them. It was, I don't know, it on one hand, I want to say it was really hard, but I didn't really struggle with the synergy. Honestly, I had more trouble doing the non-synergy run for this, and I don't know. It's not the worst challenge quest if you have the pieces. Honestly, well, that's how I feel about it. I don't know. I feel really bad saying that, but I just think about all this stuff that I had trouble with last year on this quest, and now
I'll just mention that the extra burst window, those several turns, really makes a difference
really
here, because even with the 3 LDs I had, not having that extra burst window made or broke several of my runs until I got the kill.
Yeah, so, and I just maybe that's what it is. The burst window really does help here, but you have 2 of them, so it's like you can choose from if you happen to have one. So I guess that's nice.
Go ahead, Ink.
Yeah, I mean, using Squall's burst, I totally ignored his EX. I Renzo Kukin 4 times after he used his burst in order to deal max damage to all enemies. I completely ignored his EX during that time and just went for broke. And so I could tell for sure, if I didn't have burst, my strategy would not have worked to burn them down like that. But it ended up working.
So Scott Ong and Yoshi Pasta, 2 of our friends, they both did Shantoto, Ultimecia just LDs, and Paine just realized. So, so no burst there, and Paine just realized. So it is possible. They both used Alexander as their summon. So you can go check out that on the Call to Arms. So that is probably the minimum investment. But yeah, that's still 2 LDs. So yeah, again, I just... I don't want to get back into. If you listened to the post show last week, we had a good conversation about challenge quests, but again, it's pull to complete content. It's not, it's not challenging your brain really. And the more you pull, the easier it is. I mean, that's the only thing. So Shantoto LD, Ultimecia LD, Paine just realized is a lot harder than Shantoto burst, Squall burst, Ultimecia LD. Let me just tell you that. It sure is a lot harder. So, but all right, well, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, it does require some brain thing. There were people that were stuck on one of the challenge quests, and they literally went and bought a Bloomstone and all of a sudden completed it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So but go ahead. Sorry.
No, you definitely have to think about how you're going to use those parts. But yeah, you're not doing a budget run. Let me put it that way. We don't. I believe I know Macno's here and been working on stuff. I don't believe we have a TCC challenge yet, so look for the TCC challenge. There are some interesting. We're going to try to do. I believe the conversation was an extreme challenge that's more mechanical and less restrictive. So look forward to that. We didn't get a lot of people who were able to complete the last TCC challenge. Obviously, this fight is a difficult fight, so trying to be a little creative. It's a Kreese and Macnell and Ricky and all the folks who work on the TCC challenge do a real good job. You think about the devs who actually do this for a living and how much time, depending on the fight, it seems, they spend to kind of craft these fights and what they look like. And that's kind of what the TCC challenge folks are trying to do and test it and all that kind of stuff. So, so I'm sure it's going to be a good one. Look forward to that. You can just join our Discord or follow us on Facebook, FFFTCC Podcast, or on, that's Twitter, FFTCC Podcast, or on Facebook at TCC Podcast, The Crystal Chronicles. All right. Hey, well, as of 3 minutes ago, we have a new event. And that new event brought us Purple Pajama Eater. Game files have been updated. Yes, everybody's favorite. I got my books down here. My Final Fantasy Ultimecia archives. I have all 3 volumes of that, and so I wanted to get out the entry on Desch just to remind myself of who the hell Desch was. He's that purple guy. You can see a picture of him. I could have got a picture on the screen. I should have just taken a screenshot of the book and then put it on the screen. That would have been a lot easier. But hey, Desch, or Deshu, is the last of the ancients who suffers from amnesia due to his centuries-long slumber. As the guardian of the tower built by his father, Owen, that's his father's name, Desch risked life to restore the reactor inside the Tower of Onion and prevent the collapse of the fallen continent. Isn't that exciting? So, memorable quotes, anybody? You did it! The ship is ours! Now I can pick up beauties all over the... Hey, I'm just kidding. Hey, everybody's favorite character, Desch, who you got to play for a little bit in Final Fantasy III for a while. He's here. And Desch. It's how would you pronounce the Spanish? If it was Spanish, it'd be a little bit different, right? So Mino keeps saying, is he? He's not. Does he join the party? I don't. It's been so long since I played. He's a
guest character.
Yeah, he's a guest character.
In the DS version.
Yeah.
I thought he was Furian's brother for a while, but
he is not Furian's brother because that's a different game. He is a friend of Lunith, Refia, Ark, and Ignis. Who are those fake characters they came up with for Final Fantasy III for the DS port?
Lunith, Refia,
Ingus,
Ark,
Refia, Ark, and Lunith. Ingus, Dingus. So in that version of the game, of course, Desch is a womanizer, a ladies' man. There's always a couple in Final Fantasy games, and he kind of goes after Refia, even though he is engaged or has a girlfriend, and which is weird because he's like 1,000 years old. He's been in cryogenic stasis or something. Anyway, it's not a great game.
I think he has amnesia.
He has amnesia because he was sleeping. He was put into like a coma sleep thing until the appointed time. Anyway, you can play him in the City of Final Fantasy Opera Omnia for the first time. He's a new character. Kreese, tell us about this wonderful new character.
Sure, Desch. And I'm going to call him Desch. I'm sorry, Mino,
Deshu.
if you don't like my pronunciation. So Desch is kind of a mixed kit character. He kind of does a little bit of everything is a good way to put it. So he's a Thunder Enchant Imperiler. He has healing. He has support, auras, and he's an attacker. He does a little bit of everything here. So things to keep in mind before we start. He starts with kind of the Lightning Onion Knight gimmick where he has a free ability use at the beginning of combat. He has an instant turn rate, no turn count ability at the beginning of combat, and he allows him to go immediately into his EX on his second turn. I got that right, Ink. It does, if I read his kit correctly, he starts with enough EX charge that he can go straight into EX on his second turn, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like lightning.
That's what I thought, and Onion Knight too.
Yeah.
So just want to make sure I did read that correctly. So that's how he starts. First turn, he has a free ability use. He can use skill 1 or skill 2. Second turn is immediately after that. He can use his EX ability. There you go. So the way he works is that he's kind of a stance type of character, but he doesn't apply buffs, except to himself. And the stance he's in depends on whether using skill 1 or skill 2. He's also a mixed attack type for skill 1 versus skill 2. If you use skill 1, it's a magic type attack, which is an area of attack. It does AoE damage, split HP damage. So keep that in mind. It's split AoE HP damage. But it does, and both his skill 1 and skill 2 will heal the party based on damage dealt. So keep that in mind. But if you attack with skill 1, it'll put on an anti-magic area buff on him. The big thing this does, it gives party enchant, gives party auras, and it reduces party brave damage taken by 80%. This is a pretty substantial brave damage reduction buff, which makes him very unique. It's very strong. Keep that in mind. If you use skill 2, however, he swaps out of the anti-magic area and puts on anti-physical area buff instead. Same sort of benefits, except instead of a magic brave reduction, it's a physical brave damage reduction buff. 80% is same as before. Instead of it being AoE HP split damage, it's still brave hits, AoE brave hits, but it's single target HP damage with splash, 50% splash damage. Again, heals the party based on HP damage dealt. So he does heal the party, but it is based on damage dealt. So if he's not hitting hard, he's not going to heal very well. So keep that in mind. His EX ability charges relatively quickly. It's just a straight AoE HP damage. It does full damage, and it applies a unique debuff that reduces max brave to all targets, but it gets weaker each turn it is on, ticking down over time. So every turn it is on, it'll get weaker until it's gone completely. So that's that. He also has just generic Brave Plus and HP Plus. They're nothing to really write home about. He has an additional ability that allows him to do some more burst party healing and also increase stolen party Brave Overflow for a few turns. Nothing exceptionally amazing, but it's worth mentioning. And the last thing to mention is his LD, which is where he kind of gets his kind of flash in the pan beyond his brave damage reduction power. His LD ability is called Electric Floor. It deals an AoE brave followed by a single target HP attack executed twice, but it applies a self buff called Electric Area, which does two things. It increases party elemental weakness damage dealt by 40%, but it also applies a kind of party or enemy debuff aura, where at the end of every enemy's turn, it does one of two things. 25% of the time, it'll inflict a one-turn paralyzed debuff, and if it does not inflict that paralyzed debuff, it'll apply a one-turn defense down debuff to the target. And that's pretty much his kit. The last thing I forgot to mention is that his skill 1, skill 2, and EX all apply thunder resist down. That's his kit. So he's a party enchant and parallel thunder. He's a party healer. All of his skill 1 and skill 2 do that. His additional ability does that as necessary. He provides substantial brave damage reduction, but you have to be anticipating what type of damage is coming in order to prepare for it accordingly. He's able to amplify elemental damage dealt by the party with his additional ability. He's able to unpredictably paralyze enemies, which is not great. It's a kind of a coin flip, so if you don't like that unpredictability, you got to be careful of that. And he can apply a pretty substantial max brave down debuff, which will get weaker over time with his EX ability. Other than that, he's kind of a bog standard damage dealer, but he has a lot in his kit that kind of makes him pretty strong, and he's a kind of jack of all trades in this way. He is tied to the thunder element, so you got to keep that in mind. But otherwise, he does a lot for a single character. His downsides are that he is tied to this element. You do have to be able to predict what type of damage is coming in. Be careful of that. If you can't be able to predict readily what type is coming in, or if there are fast enemies or multiple enemy types that are going to be doing multiple types of damage quickly, you aren't going to be able to reduce it all. Or if it's going to be changing quickly, you might burn through his skills. He only has 14 total skill uses, and if you have to flip between those uh, stances quickly, you'll find that you'll burn through his skills faster than you can really take advantage of his stances. So keep that in mind. Other than that, I think I've hit on his strengths and weaknesses. I will mention that I am planning to pity his LD. I'll let you know how my pulls go at the end of the night. I'll pass it over to Aaro first. Aaro, what have I missed anything? Do you want to add anything here?
I don't really have much to add. I did pull for him. I got it in 50k gems, the full kit. I take my book and go. Sadly, no Toto BT for me. I think he'll be kind of cool. I chose to pass. Even though I did put some tickets into the Alexander banner and got Raijin, I'm not a big fan of how slow he is. So I'm okay getting a different Thunder Enchanter because I kind of like I like Jack of all trades a lot. So for me, this is a good, cool kit, and I'm kind of excited to try him. That's about it. That's my initial impressions.
Yeah, I guess that brings it to me. Yeah, interestingly enough, we don't get a lot of new support characters in the LD era. In fact, if you kind of want to talk about just straight up kind of support characters, we have Desch. He's really our first LD support. Now we're going to get like EX plus realized supports. That's a little different. So I'm talking about just characters that are either LD, LDBT supports. So Desch, and then we have 2 months until we get our second, which is Edward. And then after Edward, it's a couple more months, before we get another support. So there's not a ton of LD level supports. That being said, we have a ton of great EX realized supports. So I'm just saying, Desch has that going for him. And that's why he does kind of a little bit of everything, right? He does the Enchant in Peril. He gives kind of mediocre auras, but at least some auras. He has the elemental damage up, which is super awesome. He does the weird random paralysis, which is great, and he does huge brave reduction if you're going to fight a boss like we're going to have with this event. The bosses for this event, we will go into the fight next week, but they go back and forth between magic attacks and physical attacks, and so he's obviously tailor-made for this particular event. But there are a lot of bosses that switch between magic and physical attacks if you learn the rotations enough to be able to do that. So, he's not end-all be-all, and I wish he was a different element. I mean, I'd probably pity him if he was a different element, because we already have Garnet, who's one of my favorite characters. We have Ragin. I have both of those. So we have tons of lightning characters and lightning enchant and perils. We don't have a lot of, we don't have any earth right now. We're going to get a couple. We have Lulu for fire. We don't really have any true ice. Onion Knight can do a couple turns, 10 turns total. But yeah, so, I think he's a great character. He's, skippable in a lot of ways because we are coming from a big chunk of supports. But we're not going to get a lot of supports going forward. So if you missed out on a lot of supports, if you're a newer player, if you are a newer player, it might be a good banner to pick up. A very solid support you can fit as your third person enchant and periler for quite some time. So I think that's my take on it. I think Inkwelder is left here for Desch.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, he draws a ton of comparisons to Raijin for a very fair reason. They overlap quite a lot of their items, which is why I think a lot of people that have Raijin are considering of just skipping Desch entirely. his brave damage reduction is massive. I mean, huge, to the point that you actually, for a fight where you might recommend a tank, hey, a tank would make this really easy. Yeah, Desch can practically fit in that as a pseudo tank for the party. 80% brave damage down is no joke. He's sort of like if Raijin and Hope had a baby, and he didn't inherit Hope's battery. Is sort of where he'd be. I mean, you can pair him with other auras or other supports. Like I was chatting with during my research for Desch. You can pair Desch and Saz together, and I mean, they will cap damage for months. The two of them with basically anybody else, because the elemental weakness damage boost on top of his attack aura is actually really quite potent. And then on top of it, like if you consider Raijin, you're never going to use like Raijin and Fujin. Well, Fujin you would for disciplinary committee purposes, but like Raijin and Garnet, you won't often use them together. But Desch and Garnet, absolutely. Like him boosting their weakness damage further is really, really nice. So he does a lot of stuff. I do think he's the most well-rounded and strongest character of the entire month. And also I want to point out, Mark, that Renoa and Kamari are both supports. So it's not like we don't have a lot of supports. Yes, they're mostly damage dealers that we do get, but that month there's like 3 supports that are back to back that are pretty, and they're all hybrid supports, just like Desch is, right? Desch isn't your solo support either. So yeah, I think he's great. I will not pull him because I want my characters prepared for battle and not wearing what my 4-year-old nephew wears to bed. And yeah, that's. And I also thought he was Firian's brother, and he's not. So I'm good.
Wrong game.
Completely different game. Completely different game.
The 2 and 3 are the same to me. Sorry.
Well, they pretty much are the same.
Yeah, they're not the same.
Completely the same. Completely the same. Hey, so let's look at the global podcast polls. And again, thanks to Quetzalma of MateriaBot.
Oh, Mark, one thing before we move on to the podcast polls. If you care, which I know at least one person listening cares, Yang got his character boards.
Oh, hey. Nice.
Okay, we can move on now.
All right. Well, there are some people entering the podcast polls as we speak. I can see it updating. So at the moment, we have 108 skipping, 106 using tickets like I am doing live right now, 12 people using gems, 26 willing to pity the Desch LD, and 2 using this banner to pity Shantoto's or chasing Shantoto's burst. So good luck to all of you. I hope you get what you want when you want it. Now, again, we'll talk about the chaos this week, but I will say one of the big themes of this chaos is the bosses switch back and forth from magic. They start off in a magic stance, and so they do magic damage, then they go to a physical stance, and they do physical damage, and they have random brave hit attacks. So it's hard to tell who's going to get broken because they hit in a random sequence. So look forward to that. I don't think it's as bad as the Ultimecia LC, though. So, and especially if you brought Desch, but I think any other Enchant Imperator, and of course, with Shantoto, LDBT, Ultimecia LD, Onion Knight as an option, Yang as an option, and Desch as an option, your challenge quest should be okay. So, yeah, that is all for that. And again, good luck to all of you pulling on this banner. Yeah, Ink, did you have some other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just to mention the bosses, a la Bosch and a mid-Italian type boss that buffs itself on the first turn. So feel free to summon on the last turn of the first wave, and then bring in your mid-Italian friend. And just don't let them ever get a single turn. Just burst them down. You have Shantoto as synergy. You have Ultimecia, who takes a ton of turns. I expect that I'll be able to do the challenge quest with a 35 CP Onion Knight. because Toto will just paralyze them, and Ulti will steal so many turns that hopefully can burst them down. But yeah, just you don't even have to. I did this. I did play JP during this event, and yeah, I had no idea what the bosses did whatsoever. I never saw them do anything. I did not know they had an all attack. I just knew that they target themselves. So yeah, don't bring Zach, I guess. That was about the only lesson I got out of it when I played it. But have fun.
So, Kreese, do we have any, what would you call it? Do we have any questions for host discussion tonight?
You want to move on to host discussion? Sure.
Unless there was something we forgot. Yes.
I think we've covered everything for this
Perfect.
week. There is a question that Ink wanted me to cover this week because I forgot about it last week. So I am going to cover that first so we do not forget it. Diggs asks, it is a question on entropy as a whole. While there are a ton of guides on good setups, most, if not all, are only covering characters that have been out for a long time. He is a new player, and he's sure there are many other new players which don't have these characters and could use some assistance sorting out setups with newer characters from the past months. Some discussion on good setups for earlier entropies with new characters would be very interesting. Ink, do you want to start us off with this discussion? Because I get the feeling you've thought about this a little bit more than the rest of us have.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have. So, because I've also been helping people, I don't know. I find it fun to look at someone's roster and figure out where the pieces fit. So, first thing, you should go on Discord and you should actually ask in the event help, like, hey, here's my roster, and using OO tracker is great. But what I would say, just as a rule of thumb, is just take the number of characters you have geared, that you have fully boarded, that you have EX plus for. The 0-3s count also, as long as you have them boarded as well, and you have their other gear, and divide by 3. And that's basically how high you might be able to get in the tower. You have to look at some of the more, and you can ask. I want to figure out a page to add to our Tonberry Troop website. But if you take the hardest levels, you would be able to basically, like, 2 is magic dependent, 3 is very difficult, 7 needs a tank, 8 is very difficult. So you have to try to boil down to say, oh, well, you can try to save some characters, but you have to walk through it and try and pencil in certain people in certain areas when you're looking at it. The best thing to do is just get started with it. That's really what you need to do. At least the first 5 should all be fairly, 4 should all be very reasonable, and 4 you can solo with a lot of characters. So the best thing to do is to ask on Discord. But if you look at what the hardest levels are, which I think we could all agree that, like, probably 3, 8 are absolutely awful. Those are the 2 worst of the first 10, probably.
The first several tiers also only typically require 1 fully invested character. Like, I think, especially early on, most of us couldn't invest more than 1 purple character per tier. So we had to make do with EX only or 0-3 characters in many cases. So if you look back at rosters we did, in many cases we were working with 3 to 4 summon boards, 0-3 or EX only characters. And here's a hint, if you want to try to make things easier for yourself, go back, master summon boards for characters you plan to use. If you're using the Mog Pass, it makes it a lot faster to do that. So that will speed up the investment time it requires. Look to see what the boss's resistances are. Tonberry Troop has a good guide for what the bosses can do and what you need to plan for. And figure out what characters you actually have gear for recently, and where as Ink said, what the stopping blocks are, and where you think you'll need to save your harder hitters for later on.
Yeah, don't save too much. It is best to just get started. But yeah, if you know that you're going to be able to get through, like, let's say tier 3 for sure, well, don't use Warrior of Light on 1 because you're going to need him on 3, right? Like, if you can help that. If you are not sure, then just start and try to do one healer, one support, one damage healer. Like, just spread it out a little bit, and it should be reasonable. I gave someone help the other day, and they literally swamped through the first 4 tiers in 2 or 3 hours. So just jumping into it is the best.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the best strategy is to just go in. I really like what Ink said. Take the number of characters you have invested in, divide by 3, at least realize DXs, and that should give you a sense of how many you can do, and just go in and start working on tiers, and do as best you can. So, yeah. Thank you, Iconoclast Envy, for the subscription with Twitch Prime. Appreciate that. Some new faces subbing tonight. Appreciate that. Aaro, did you have any thoughts on that? I didn't hear from you, did we?
No. I guess since you see a lot of people using older characters, you can look at what they're using, and if you think you understand the characters well enough that are being picked, you can pick other ones that are similar and newer and stronger, probably too, on top of that. So somebody like using, for example, I'm trying to think of like early on, like Ramza or something. We have other party buffers. You could probably pick somebody else like that. Something like maybe even the recently added Paine, or let's see, who else would maybe like, let's say you have Raijin, you and somebody used Edge on a stage. Maybe you can use Raijin instead on that stage. Then, since they're kind of similar, they use a similar element. They have disruption of some sort to prevent HP damage attacks. So I don't know. That's kind of what I would do, or just look at videos to see how people are kind of like tackling it, in the sense of like, if you understand the game obviously well enough. If you don't, just ask around and be like, I don't get the gimmick of this tier. What do I do to deal with it? And I mean, yeah, like Ink said, join our Discord server. We'll be happy to help you out as best we can to help you understand the gimmicks after you look through it and just still very, very confused. That's really the main thing, is asking questions, because there's a lot of nuances in this game that I know it's hard for new players to instantly grasp right away. But I know many of us have helped total newbies in this game become veterans in 2 months. So yeah, it's very doable.
All right, another good question. I'm glad we brought it up. So, yeah, I think you just jump in. Don't be afraid, and especially if you're doing current content, yeah, those first few tiers are going to seem a little easier than the stuff we're dealing with right now. Another question?
This is going to be a two-parter, because we got some questions. We got questions that are kind of related, and I'm just figure we'll cover them together. So Talut asked, what are the chances GL gets an early Moogle artifact quality of life compared to when GL got it? And Dark Demon asked, what are the host's thoughts on the artifact upgrades being tied to the Mog Pass? So I'm just going to cover them. We'll just cover them both together. And I'll go first. I don't generally... I think GL's probably going to get the Moogle artifact quality of life earlier than Japan. We get a lot of these quality of lives early. I wouldn't be surprised if we get them sooner. I don't know how much sooner. Maybe around our third anniversary, maybe a little sooner, like around Christmas time. I wouldn't expect it too much sooner than that. As for what are my thoughts about the artifact upgrades being locked behind the Mog Pass, I don't know. I haven't thought too much about it. Ink, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, I agree with you that it would be at anniversary or hopefully earlier, but yeah, we'll see what they decide to do. The Moogle Pass specifically just makes sure that you get guaranteed oranges. It doesn't increase your chance of getting something. It does. Well, it does if you're aiming for perfects, sure. But the fact that it's a very accessible item again. So I'm gonna remind people from the last time that I was on that the Moogle Pass is $5. I don't know how much you spend. If you're asking about artifacts, you're probably farming artifacts. I've spent hours farming artifacts, and if I could pay $5 to lower that time to 30 minutes and also make my summon board grinding easier and also all the other perks, I'm just glad they put it in the Moogle Pass and they didn't put it in another paid item. I think it's great. Like, I definitely value my time at more than $1 an hour, and I would absolutely love to support something like that. It would actually incentivize me to get the Moogle Pass, like the basic one, on a regular basis if they got it, versus every other month for summon boards. So yeah, I think it's excellent, and yeah, we should get it early.
Arrow?
I like the idea that there's more benefits to the subscription, especially since you don't even have to get the more expensive pass. It just comes with the basic one. Honestly, you don't need perfect artifacts usually in this game. I've never encountered a time where I went, gee golly, if I just had absolutely perfect artifacts on this character, it would make all the difference for this chaos fight. I mean, so on the one hand, it's like, it's just a nice quality of life for those who really like to grind artifacts. But if you don't really care, hey, it's still a nice bonus because you might wind up with the best stuff after 30 minutes of farming, like Ink said. So I like it. I think it's a good benefit, but it doesn't, in the end, like, you can still farm the basic artifact you need for each character, and it might take a little more time, but it's still doable. And just in case, your finances are really that tight, I understand. It's also like there's like the amount it costs in different countries. It can vary, and it can be more expensive in some places than others. I respect that.
Good point.
So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. I like it, but it doesn't actually matter. It's not gonna be a pay to win thing. That's just kind of how I feel about it. It is a nice perk though, so just think of it more like that.
Artifacts are the worst part about this game. They always have been the worst part about this game. I've always hated artifacts and the artifact system. So any upgrade to that would be great. And if we get it sooner than later, that would be great. And if I have to pay money for it, I'll happily pay money for it. Yeah. Are there other questions?
Okay. Necklord asks, he has a little bit of a preamble before he asks us a specific question, so I'll give the preamble first. The Brave damage reduction changes have been in place for a little bit now, and though it's noticeable, he doesn't suffer too much in the damage department, bringing Imperil Enchant even when using Cyan, who has less than ideal potencies and so suffers more so from the change. And so he asks this, was the Brave damage reduction all just a big overhyped meme all along? Ink, your thoughts?
Ooh, I get to go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Like, I mean, I've been using Sabin all month, and he's still hitting his EX was hitting max damage at the end of fights, the plus version, which ignores defense, which technically was supposed to get hit by this Brave damage reduction, and it doesn't matter. And that's with like a 40 to 60% attack aura on the team, which is considered quite low. I mean, it's definitely blown way out of proportion that people assume that it would be like a huge thing and that all ignore defense characters. I mean, Taz just used Prish on one of the like very recent quests. I forgot which one, but if you want to use ignore defense characters, the change to Brave damage reduction has not changed it at all. My Sabin deals 1,000 less damage per Brave hit. Who cares? That's really, really minor. So I think it's a good change that they made, for sure. You can feel at end of fight when they're doing Brave damage reductions. If you don't have an enchanter or you don't have any Brave damage boosting, then it hurts.
Yeah, GRW18 says Terra's still dealing all 9, so with proper support. Arrow, what do you think?
If anything, it enforced you to have balanced teams.
Yeah.
I feel like for some characters, like, I've noticed they got better with Brave Reduction because the defense spikes aren't as intense. So like Kryle's no longer hitting for ones like Chaos with their EX, which I gotta tell you makes me really happy. I've kind of been using her more for fun again on stuff. And this is outside of Synergy, so keep that in mind too. And I kind of like that some of the characters who came from early Chaos being able to pump out maybe not the best numbers, but definitely better numbers than they were before. So I feel like Brave Reduction's been a boon for some characters, and I haven't really noticed on any of them it was supposed to really hurt because I have Rydia, and I don't feel like my Rydia does any more, any less damage than she already did before, and she's got that EX that ignores defense too. So that's pretty much my thoughts on that.
I agree with you all. I think it turned out to not be as big a deal as some people made it sound. So it wasn't too much of a change. Obviously, there were the brave damage reduction spikes like Alpha No Chaos, but those were few and far between.
Yeah, blame Mino Spelgud for hyping up the brave damage.
And he's not here to defend himself.
That's right. Yeah, no, it is what it is, right? You can be creative. We just have such a huge roster right now that you can make those characters work if you want to make them work. That's for sure. So, yeah, are there any other questions?
Katsufumi asks, what are your thoughts on adding Cosmos, Chaos, maybe Chaos Challenge, and Lufenia difficulties to previous Lost Chapter and Story chapters? He's thinking of Squall's Lost Chapter and how fun and challenging it would be to have those available with synergy characters plus additional rewards so that he can finally, or we can finally purple some more folks. I'm torn on those. Some of those old events were not designed with harder content in mind. And you can see what happens when, if I'm sure some of us remember when harder content is designed without balance in mind. I mean, I'm sure they could make it work. I'm not sure it's a great idea. And while more content's always nice, I'd rather they just work on making newer stuff rather than just retroactively trying to append harder difficulty onto older stuff. I don't think it's necessary in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think you would have to you would have to retune a lot of stuff. Ink, what were you going to say?
I mean, there's no room for it. They'd have to add extra nodes on the map for Squall's LC. I just don't even think it's possible or worth their time. Forget tuning the boss fight. I mean,
right.
The map doesn't even support it.
True. Very good. Aero, any thoughts on that?
I can't see them adding something like that. I do like that they have added the new co-ops every month, like with the Cactuar. But I would also love new, just general co-op quests. I've always said this, and maybe doing something based around some of these old Lost Chapter bosses in a new co-op that maybe new set of co-ops that kind of rotate every now and then would be really cool. I just don't know, like, if they'd add something like that. And if forward rewards, maybe you could have something like, here's a couple of ingots, or here's a couple of nuggets every time, every month you clear out the shop or something. So that would be just something I'd like. But as for adding new nodes to old Lost Chapters, I just don't see it quite happening anytime soon. And like Ink said, I don't even know where you'd fit the nodes on some of them because the way they design the maps. So it'd be very difficult to add it in as well.
All right. Other questions, Crease, on the list?
We're going to do one more.
Perfect.
And the only reason I'm going to address this one is because it's on the list twice. And it's the only time we're going to answer this until 2021, guys, okay? So do not ask this again. I'm going to delete it if it shows up on the list again. Got it? Good. 2 people asked this. Anomander and Final Asim. Who is the host's top pick for the next global first character? I'm going to put my prediction here, and I'm probably going to be very wrong, but I suspect it will be Riku. Ink?
I had thought of Elena is my guess. from
Elena
FF7.
from Final Fantasy what?
From FF7, she's one of the Turks.
Yep. Yeah. Some Elena, or saying Elena. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good guess. Yeah. Yeah. Arrow, who do you think? Who's your guess here? I'm trying to find mine.
If he somehow doesn't come out on a story chapter anytime soon, we have been clamoring for an FFT character for a long time. I'm going to put down Mustadio. I know everybody wants Orlando, but I think Mustadio is the cooler character, and I would think if they're going to add an FFT character, he would be an excellent global first. I think many would pull for him all the same.
Here, if you can see it on my little tiny camera, that is the third global exclusive first character, Scott from Final Fantasy II, the powerhouse, the man, the myth, the legend.
No Scott.
Yeah, Scott
He's
Wen.
Edward Light.
Hashtag.
Is that Firian's brother?
Yeah, Firian's brother, Scott.
No.
Answer me this.
Scott is pre-Edward.
Answer me this.
Awful.
Would reality and the cosmos have been saved without Scott? No. That's all you need to know. He was instrumental in saving the world from the Emperor. Or reality, or whatever the Emperor was trying to do. Scott.
It's true.
Scott for president 2020. So I think that's all we need to know. Yeah, well, what are your guesses? Feel free to comment below. Click like, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. Oh, wait, we're on Twitch. Give us a sub. Follow.
Someone guessed Adia. Adia could totally be correct now.
Hey.
Am I thinking of Gordon, Retro Gamer Dad? I thought that was Scott. I'm forgetting my FF2 characters. I'm sorry then.
Yeah, it's Gordon.
Gordon's a bard. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Scott's no
I was
bard.
mixing them up. I haven't played FF2 in so long.
Yeah, Gordon's worthless. We're talking about Scott.
Yeah, I agree. If Scott was the next global first, I would definitely pity. He's a pretty cool dude.
I would pity Scott twice if I had to. I mean, probably
never mind then. Scott's okay.
Probably the best named Final Fantasy character in the entire mythos of Final Fantasy. He has, I think, the most fantastic name of any Final Fantasy character, Scott.
I feel like I just started a new job, and I'm at dinner with coworkers, and they're talking shop. I have no idea who any of these people are.
Like, who's Scott? I want Red 13. Yeah.
We're never getting Red 13. The skeleton doesn't exist in the game.
No. All right. Well, hey, looking ahead, thank you for all your questions. You can go on to our Discord and podcast questions, and we'd be happy to talk about your questions in a future installment of the Crystal Chronicles podcast. Hey, looking ahead, we have the SQEX community stream this Monday. It's a little early, but it's going to tell us about what's coming up, including Act 2, Chapter 10, Machina's LC, new Heretic campaign, Ultimate Odin, Bosch LC, and the 9 events. So next month, or really at the end of this month and then next month, but in the next mobile stream cycle, we have a new chapter and a new summon board. So a lot of good stuff. Hey, appreciate you all listening. If you want to learn more about us, it is tccpodcast.com. The Crystal Chronicles on Twitch and Facebook. You can follow our Discord links at tccpodcast.com or go to Facebook. FFTCC Podcast at FFTCC Podcast is our Twitter. Thank you, Crease. Thank you, Arrow. Arrow, how can we get a hold of you and follow your content?
You can find me on YouTube at Leili, which is Leilee. And of course, as you guys know, I am a mod on the TCC's Discord server. You may ping me if you have any questions, and I will come and address them as soon as I am able.
And we appreciate that. Inkwelder, how can we get a hold of you, and what are you up to, and what is the troop up to these days?
We're up to keeping up with things. It's tough. We're tired for sure, but yeah, tonberrytroop.com. I notice a lot of people don't use our resource hub. Well, they use the summon board stuff when new summons come.
Yeah.
But we do have sphere stuff on there. We have an extensive beginner guide that is meant to help people. We added a pull strategies page. So if you're wondering how to pull during the LDBT era, there's a page for some of the best strategies for that. We have do's and don'ts, which are a lot more. If you don't want to read a guide and you just say, I just want to play, well, you can read our do's, don'ts in a minute and make sure that you don't make any mistakes. So there's a lot of really good resources that we've worked on there. And I do plan to do an entropy starter type of page for people, just so that our entropy pages have a little bit more longevity to them, I would say. But yeah, that's what's going on.
Awesome. Well, again, tomberrytroop.com, and support them if you can. They do wonderful work, all those beautiful infographics. But beyond the infographics, if you didn't realize, tomberrytroop.com has a lot of great resources. And definitely, if you have friends or people, but if you know people who are new to the game, the beginner guide is very, very good. Pretty much has everything you need to know. I mean, much better than any other beginner guide you're going to find out. Just that kind of timeless, simple information. Really, really great stuff. So, and we look forward to all that. So, hey, thank you to our crew, which is Kreese, myself, and Mino. Thank you to our mods, Aero, Inc., J.A, Jin Lee, Macnol, and Quetz, and Strafe. Thank you to Dreamy for doing our intro video, Jin Lee for doing our backgrounds emotes, Hey13 for the intro narration, and Ryan is the Bomb 203 for our intro music. Check him out on YouTube, and you can check out Jin Lee, Strafe, Aero on YouTube as well, and Macnol, DecityInfo.com, and Quetz at MateriaBot. Thanks to Black Cloud, Black Nero on YouTube, and Shara, who is the main cord Reddit admin, for their help and collaboration, and also Ricky Shrew for helping with the TCC challenges. So, hey, this has been episode 115 of the Crystal Chronicles, recorded on August 20th, 2020. Until next week, the best of luck for your Purple People Leader, or your PJ Mask, or whatever you're going to call him, Desch, our friend Desch. And I hope you get him, and you get a few BTs in the process. Until next week, friends, good luck and goodbye.